Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Something a little bit different from my channel. As much as I do love to talk to people over the internet, I thought, let's switch up. Let's actually meet up in real life. So I have got Blake with me, aka BrrrakeF1. Now, you've actually been on the channel before a while ago, so this is a bit of a brand new experience for both of us, mate.
It is. It's been a minute. We met at the Formula E, and now we're here making some content.
We're going to get to that, how we met, by the way, super quick. Now, I know you've said this a million times because you've been on a million different podcasts, but just for the people that don't know, and I mean, I think I could reel off your career right now. The amount of times I've heard it on so many different podcasts, but 30 seconds, super quick. Now, you are a content creator. Again, we've actually done a video before, like, again, earlier in the year, but you did used to work in Formula 1, so that's, like, super cool. But what did you used to be? 30 seconds. Don't go,
30 seconds.
Don't tell me your life story, man.
No, okay, 30 seconds. Vehicle dynamics engineer at Force India, 2012, turns trackside performance engineer that same year. Fast forward a couple of years, performance engineer, supposed to be for Sebastian Vettel, but he goes away to Ferrari. Performance engineer at Red Bull Racing for 3 years with Daniil Kvyat and Max Verstappen. And then 2018 onwards until 2021, I spent the rest of my time at Red Bull Racing as a simulator performance engineer, so focusing on the development of the car rather than operation of the car. What? 30 seconds. That was less than 30 seconds. Bonus point.
Can I just say though, what a flex! I know it still sounds good now. Like when you say that, I'm just like, fuck, that sounds cool. But yeah, no, fair enough. But yeah, thank you so much for again doing something a little bit different now. I wanted to record in real life because as much as time as we spend on the internet, and we could have just done, this video over Zoom or something, wanted to switch it up, do it in real life, a bit of a different dynamic. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a fun little video. Now, actually, you mentioned when we met, that is where we're going to jump into because we're going to talk about that night, Formula E, when we actually did meet because we've known each other now for a few months. I forget when our first video was actually. I think it was like back in June, July or something.
Probably 4, 5, 6 months.
Miami, yeah, I think it was like after Miami or something.
Yeah, that was it.
And then we did finally meet in during the Formula E London E-Prix. Matt was there as well. Some of you guys might know Matt Ames. And do you want to explain I think we met on the Saturday. It was a pretty decent night. I'm not gonna lie. I don't remember too much about it. We did go out for drinks. Now I don't actually live in London, so that E-Prix was my first ever kind of experience of Formula E. So I was staying around Matt's, who does live in London. You were staying allegedly in a hotel. Now again, we watched the E-Prix. I think it was on the Saturday, the first race. Then we went out, had a couple drinks. And this is, by the way, this is when I lost my voice as well, by the way.
Was it?
It was that night.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. So I lost my voice, that some of you guys might know, from when the whole, Piastri and Alonso thing kicked off.
Yeah.
It was because of that Saturday night. Because I woke up on the Sunday, and, I woke up on the Sunday at Matt, and I was like, my voice is going. This is not good. And also, by the way, how lost my voice in a Formula E race. How does that even happen? But anyway. So anyway, we have the drinks, Me and Matt go back to his, because I'm staying around his, because I'm also going in on the Sunday. And you go to your hotel. How did that go out? How did that turn out?
So I shared a lift back with somebody else that lived in the area, and we got a taxi. It was about 45 minutes away from where the E-Prix was, and I was thinking, this is cool. Booking.com, whatever. You guys are dead to me, by the way. And then I show up at this place, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I canceled your booking." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "You hadn't paid." I was like, the website said I pay when I get here. He's like, nope, it's canceled.
How many stars was that? How many stars was it?
On the website.
How many stars
on
was
the
it?
website, it was like a 6.8 out of 10 or something, which is not bad. I go look on before I even get in the taxi. And I'm like, let's just look up this place to see where I'm going. I'm like, why does this have nothing but 1 and 2 star reviews? So I'm not feeling too confident. I show up at the hotel and I like, do you have a room? He's like, no, you're out of luck, mate. So I call Matt. I'm like, Matt.
Keep in mind, this is at 1 o'clock in the morning now?
Yeah, it was 12:30 when I got back.
Oh my God. So yeah, you're in London. He's from Milton Keynes, by the way. I mean, ex-Red Bull, so they all live there, nutters. But anyway, we'll get to Milton Keynes later on, I'm pretty sure as well. But so this is now 12:30. You're in London with nowhere to sleep for the night. And the first part, you call Matt, who I'm sleeping around his. We're ready to go to sleep, by the way, at this point. Yeah. And then he usually gets a call like, bro, I don't have anywhere to sleep.
you got any room? So I call Matt, and it was like another 30-minute taxi ride. So I get an Uber over there, and he makes me a nice little air mattress in his recording studio office room.
Yeah, we go into Matt's room to get the air mattress, and obviously his girlfriend is there as well. We're preparing it for you. We're like, Matt's pumping up the mattress, and I'm just there watching. This is actually nuts. But yeah, moral of the story. 1-star, 2-star hotel. There's a reason why they have those.
Don't just use your favorite hotel booking website. Also consult the Google, because I swear they were definitely paying people to bump up these ratings on this abysmal dump of a place with
You
very
saw it at
dubious
low
standards.
to high, didn't you? You just saw it at low to high and thought, yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
whatever.
it's like it's above mid. I just need somewhere like, I know I'm going out for drinks. We're gonna hang out after the race. I'm going to record something in London on Sunday, so I didn't get to go to the Sunday race. Big up Jake Dennis winning that first race.
Yeah, big up Jake Dennis.
Go Jake!
Oh,
and
mate,
that was it. And we had a great time, you know. And then you were gone first thing in the morning. You realized you'd lost your voice. So you're like,
honestly, mate,
crept out of the house.
I woke up and I was like, because obviously, you know, everyone's still sleeping because you guys slept in a little bit. I had to get to like the Sunday race quite early, and I woke up and I just thought, this is not good. Like, I'm breathing and it hurts. And then by the time it came to the end of the day, yeah, it was just gone, mate. It actually like hurt to breathe and like. That was us meeting. So yeah, I mean, that Saturday was a good night.
That was good, man. It was talking about race cars, life, and everything in between. And I guess when you're doing this as a content creator, it is kind of like it is mostly race cars and
exactly, yeah,
and everything else in between.
There was some fun stories that night. Nothing, unfortunately, some of them we probably can't share on this, but maybe actually, well, it depends how, you know, it depends what we want to divulge. But
yeah, and we can probably, if anything's, decide afterwards, be like, you know what, probably edit that story out.
Yeah, probably just edit. Yeah, anything can be edited out, mate. This is not live. This is the beauty of this setup. But let's get actually into some Formula One, because this isn't, actually I should say, this isn't really an interview or anything. We do just want to like just mess about and just talk chinwag, as a certain pink YouTuber might say.
Hello,
actually,
mate.
The first thing I do want to talk about is actually today was announced. Yuki Tsunoda 2023 confirmed. Yuki, how are you feeling about that? Because I think he's definitely improved this year, so I see why they signed him up again for 2023. I think a little bit, some of it has been shaky. I don't think he's scored points since like Canada or something. Yeah. So maybe it's the AlphaTauri, maybe it's the car. The car's definitely dropped off, but yeah, it seems like the safe option at the moment. It seems like Marco doesn't want to go with any of his other juniors, and we'll talk about the drive market as well. But what do you think, Yuki Tsunoda? They signed him up for 2023. Are you kind of like, is that right?
I think they're hedging, because it's like, I think it's right now it's difficult to have a result in that car. The midfield in Formula One right now is absolute chaos. You know, you see, you know, back in Austria, we talk about Mick Schumacher. It's like, is he going to be a legend? You know, he's got his elbows out. He's got this new. We haven't talked about him since then, and it's just chaos in the midfield. It's teams struggling to get to grips with aero, tires, chassis, and inconsistencies in pace, and the drivers probably, you know, pinging all over the place. So I think Yuki's a very safe bet. He looks, you know, he seems like he's a lot more mature. We had the whole debacle in Zandvoort, which, you know, that was crazy, but you know, that was just a team communication issue in the end, is all that happened.
It was nuts though. Yeah, I mean, again, we like, as fun as it is to, you know, throw conspiracies at Red Bull, and I mean, again, you used to work for them, so I'm sure you were working during Abu Dhabi 2021. That's all I'll say. That's
no, I was not.
Oh, you're not?
No, my last race was the race before that, so I was
very convenient. Very convenient. Very convenient. Okay.
I paid my couple shillings to the boys to. No, come on.
Did you actually have any like? Did you see Yuki at all, like in the simulator?
Yeah.
Did you have any like? How was he actually?
Yuki was super cool, man. Yuki was one of the people, because when I was there were times when I would, you know, I'd be in and out of the simulator. I'd see them in there and just say hi to people, because the guys are in the factory using the sim. So I say, you know, hi. He's super nice dude. He, like, everybody that works with him really likes him. He's into gaming as well, so that was one of my passions, is gaming. He's a bit of a Apex Legends demon. He's a very nice kid. He's super cool. So
how did you find it with him in the simulator? Was he like, what really stands out? Because that, like, we don't really get that side of the sport in terms of like, what are drivers like in the simulator? What's good? Like, what's bad? Like, where was you?
So I didn't work with him in the sim, but like in terms of like other drivers, like as a generality, you get a good idea of people's work ethic and how much they're focused, but most of that is based on how invested they are in the simulator as a tool. And I think for the most part, most of the drivers that I've worked with were very invested in the simulator as a tool, because you don't get any testing time on the track. You know, free practice sessions are shorter. There's no testing during the season, hardly at all, unless you've got like new tires or something coming, but that's controlled by Pirelli then. So the simulator gives you a good opportunity to see what the guys are like, and just what they're like, you know, off the camera, because you'll invariably end up having lunch with them when they're in the factory, chat with them, and all the Red Bull crew. are very sound.
How actually connected is Red Bull and AlphaTauri? Because, you know, we think of them as kind of like the sister team, but are they completely separate? Like, do you have the AlphaTauri guys come in at any point?
No. Like there's very strict rules now, and they've even clarified after last season, I think. There's very strict rules about what kinds of information you can and can't share. And as far as I could tell, they were completely separate entities. Like, you know, like there's certain standard components that, like gearboxes and stuff like that teams sell to other teams, which are regulated components which they're allowed to sell. That was kind of the extent.
But that was it.
Yeah, that was
only this. I think it's like a certain list of components that you can sell, and other than that, because you don't want. We obviously had the whole, like, even the Racing Point controversy between Mercedes and, you know, with their brake ducts and how much of their car was like copied. So I don't think, especially Red Bull, like, they don't want any of that sort of trouble in it.
No,
like,
I think they don't.
For sure. But also, in terms of like AlphaTauri now, it's a bit of a weird one though, because Helmut Marko doesn't want any of his. So Vips no, Lawson no, Deruvula no, and he's kind of like, we've got Yuki and we've got Pierre Gasly for next year. I mean, the funny part is, obviously, Alpine are trying to get Pierre Gasly, but he's already got a contract. So it's such a weird situation where Pierre's already got a contract, but potentially, you know, he might be out. They tried Colton Herta with the super license points being, and as you can tell, he's American. So how did you, what do you think about the whole, like, what do you think about the whole super license thing in terms of, like, with Colton Herta? Because there was no force majeure at all. Like, the other teams are not going to just, you know, let him slide.
No.
And I think Red Bull, I think in the end they looked at all of the options, like sending him to Euro, like it's like F3 Asia, like sending him to.
That's a popular one for late in the year because that's running at a different time. So send them over there, score a couple points.
But the problem is, at that point, Colton would have only had enough points by like February, like January.
Yeah.
And that is nuts. Like leave your driver lineup unconfirmed. And the thing is, like, that's just with Colton Herta. Like, Alpine, if they're looking for Pierre Gasly, like, that means they're going to have to wait till, like, February or January. Yeah. And at that point, you're getting, like, that's crunch time. Like, you do not want to wait that long.
Yeah, you don't want to rock up and then you're, like, calling Hulkenberg back. It's like, hey, man, we got a car for you. I mean, not a disrespect to him, but he's been in there to fill in a couple of shoes when people had COVID and stuff like that. But the whole super license point is so weird because I had a chat with a couple of guys about this the other day, and it's basically
give the podcast a shout, man.
So I do a podcast with my boy Engine Mode 11, and we had João Janete, who also has a Portuguese podcast, Domingos.
Thoroughly recommend. I actually watched that when you got streamed on YouTube. I watched the entire thing. Honestly, mate, thoroughly recommended. And that guy, he did not hold back, bro.
No, he's an absolute legend.
And he works in Formula 2. Like, some of the stuff he said, go and check out. I'll have it linked below, actually. That was a great point.
But, like, you know, the point that João made was basically that whole series is lined up to make sure they're keeping as much money as possible in the Formula 2, Formula 3, you know, the official feeder series, and pocket as much money of that as possible. Because how is it possible that a bunch of, you know, kids that are in F3, that are in their second or third year of open wheel racing, those guys score more championship points towards the super license than, you know, very seasoned drivers that are in IndyCar, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a much more prestigious series. And anybody that disagrees, we could have the conversation,
it's
but
fact.
I struggle to see that's like, you know, these guys are, you know, these are very demanding cars. They're very physical cars. They're challenging. You have a very stiff grid. It's a spec series. There's lots of competition. And then a bunch of guys and gals that are in their second or third open wheel series. And it's like, you know, IndyCar gets less points.
You mentioned the word kids, and you almost like, some of them are kids.
Yeah.
Some of them are 16, 17, like only just turning 18, and they're in Formula 3. Like, I mean, and again, IndyCar, you know, those kids, they're paying to be in Formula 3. They're paying to get in the best teams, advance their careers. And of course, money is massively important in, you know, in motorsport, wherever it is.
Yeah.
IndyCar, those are professional racing drivers. They're getting paid to be at the top of sport, to be at the top of IndyCar. But ultimately, it's a monopoly, isn't it?
Yeah.
They want it to trickle down from Formula 1 to Formula 2 to Formula 3. IndyCar, it's higher level than Formula 3 or Formula 2, no doubt. But they want it in there. It's almost like a little pyramid, isn't it? They want it in the Formula pyramid, the FIA pyramid, and IndyCar, as much as they respect it, you know, those are professional drivers.
But they're not really putting any respect on it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, in terms of like difficulty of car to drive, and like Super Formula is probably the closest you're going to get to a Formula 1 car, with a lot of, you know, very expert, a lot of Japanese drivers.
How close is it actually? Because I've heard that, to be honest, like, even Super Formulas, even above Formula 2 in terms of like how difficult and how quick the cars are. Where do you think it is actually?
I'm not familiar enough with super formula, but it's up there. It's definitely up there in terms of power, downforce, grip, and everything else. And there's some very, expert drivers in that series as well. And
Red Bull do love to actually, because like I think Pierre Gasly have gone there, so they do like those.
Yeah,
but it's just the super license points thing. It's more than just about like giving more points to IndyCar. There's a political aspect to it as well, and I'm not. Do you think they're going to change it? Do you think they're feeling the pressure after this whole Colton Herta? Because it is ridiculous how I think Romain Grosjean's actually Colton's teammate, I think, or something like that. And you cannot tell me that. And obviously Colton Herta's beaten Romain Grosjean. Romain is someone who right now could step into a Formula 1 car and do a decent job. He was only in Formula 1 a few years ago. So to say that Romain could still come back to Formula 1 and Colton like can't do a job, and I've only just watched IndyCar like this first season. I'm not saying that Colton Herta is like the best driver of all time, but I think he's finished like 8th or 9th this season, and that is a good good result in IndyCar. Like, that is a high series, but it seemed like Red Bull were trying to go that route. They were trying to again send him to Formula 3 Asia and potentially a Toyota series in like New Zealand, because even that gives even more points. Just give him every single FP1 session possible, like go to any team possible, but I think in the end they just thought that's not worth the hassle. No. Like that's going to be...
They're playing super license points bingo with this kid.
Literally, they're just trying to like add up as much as they could. But I think Helmut Marko came out and said, we're going to give up on that. We just can't do that. So it is going to be Yuki Tsunoda. It is going to be potentially Pierre Gasly. But now all of a sudden, the man of the moment out of nowhere, Nick de Vries, now he might be at AlphaTauri. So again, even though like Pierre Gasly does have the contract, I think Pierre Gasly does want to leave. He has that contract, but I don't think Red Bull don't mind him leaving, but they want to find the right guy, or at least someone that can do a competent job. So now potentially they're putting in a Mercedes ex Junior, Nick de Vries. They might be testing him out to replace Gasly to free him up for Alpine. So it's a bit of a mess. But what did you think about actually his first weekend in the Williams?
I spent quite a bit of time looking at de Vries' performance, and personally over the last X years, I don't follow the lower formula too much because I'm just super invested in my job and what I'm doing. And now my job is Formula 1 content. And I'm not paying too much attention to the juniors. So I went back and looked through de Vries' history and I was like, not bad. I mean, it took him a while to win F2, whereas guys like Russell aced it.
Straight off the bat.
Piastri, F3, F2, back-to-back. Russell, F2. Charles Leclerc, back-to-back. F3, F2. So it's like, okay, and it takes him a while. And he only had to beat Latifi.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's like, does that devalue that F2 win?
It's not that, to me, I don't mind winning it on the third, but when it was Latifi, it's just like, and now we've learned a lot more about Nicholas Latifi. And to be fair, I'm someone who doesn't like give too much about like what they did 5 or 6 years ago, but even
judge
now,
them on what they do now. Judge them on what they're doing now.
And I did watch Formula E. This was my first actually ever time watching the entire Formula E season, and he was the Formula E champion from last season, and Formula E, you have to understand going in that it's a very chaotic series. It's not going to be, consistent results throughout, although consistency is massively important in such a chaotic series. The qualifying format for this season as well was a little bit different, but the thing with de Vries is that he has these peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
At his absolute peak, he has got the speed, no doubt about it. He's super quick, and he can do a job. Like, there's no, especially, he struggled a little bit with qualifying, it must be said, but he has, again, like I said, peaks and troughs. Like, he was so inconsistent. And it's something that I think Joao, is it Joao? Yeah? Joao, there we go.
Come just J-Wow.
J-Wow. It's something that J-Wow said on your podcast, and it really stuck with me and actually made a lot of sense, is that he might not be the strongest person. And that made total sense because, again, that talent is there for Nick de Vries, and that's why he can win races. He had some dominant wins this season, but mentally, I think he struggles a little bit when the other quality drivers are really turning it on, and that's that inconsistency that we see.
But I think that we've established probably that he has a reasonable high ceiling. He can perform, but him locking it in. But surprisingly, let's judge him on recent performances. So I spent quite a bit of time looking at de Vries' performance in free practice against the teammates in the Formula 1. He's collected all the Infinity Stones as far as free practices this season. So
is he missing any more Mercedes teams?
He's done Williams twice. So Williams in Barcelona, Williams in the race.
In the race, yeah.
Then he's done Mercedes in France.
Yeah.
And he did Aston in Monza free practice.
I think that was a big help, by the way.
He hasn't done McLaren.
He hasn't done McLaren. There we go.
Right, Daniel, get rid of your seat for
And
FP1.
I'm pretty sure McLaren still have like opened up
for him.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they've still got to do more junior FP1 sessions. So, mate, McLaren, get him in. Give this guy all of the Mercedes power teams. But
and then he's just gonna go.
Exactly.
And then he's gonna be world champion.
And then he's gonna end up at Ferrari. But the point is, do you know what the funny thing is about Nick de Vries is that 2 weeks ago, before he actually even when it was announced that he was going to do that Aston Martin FP1, it was still, quite, everyone was joking around. They didn't really believe in him that much. And he was just a guy that was kind of almost being used because he's old enough and he won't crash the car. Like, I think the team just gave him the FP1s just because he's got experience. I think he's like 27 years old. He's not going to bin it like some of these younger drivers. He doesn't have like as much to prove as like, some of the younger drivers. So I think that's why they were almost just giving him, because these are mandatory sessions.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he gets his opportunity and he's the guy in demand. Everyone wants him. Like, Williams want him right now.
Yeah.
AlphaTauri out of nowhere want him when, they can't get Colton Herta. And obviously Alpine are also considering, and it's just come out of nowhere. Like, I think it's also important to like note with Nick De Vries is that he is a good driver, no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's this hype around him is almost like as if he's like this world champion. It's like Oscar Piastri at the moment. So you've got to like temper how good he is, but it's interesting.
But I mean, I'm personally, let's go back to past performances. I'm personally more interested to see what Piastri can do versus what De Vries can do. Because I think we've established like he looks like has a high ceiling, a little bit inconsistent, and he happens to have just driven very well in a Williams up against Latifi. And never mind the comparison to Latifi.
I think that's gone. Latifi's bad comparison.
He did a good race in Monza. Did he finish where he started?
I think somewhere, I think because he finished in 9th in the end.
Yeah, so he drove a super consistent race. He didn't lose places off the start. He was aggressive. He was wheel to wheel with an Alfa Romeo.
It was Joe, That final stint really impressed me because originally, obviously, before Ricciardo retired, it looked like it was between him and Zhou to hang on to that final point.
Yes.
And Zhou was all over him. Yep. And all of a sudden, like later on in the race, he was gapping Zhou. He was attacking Gasly ahead of him.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether he like kept tyres or just the way he was defending. I mean, we know that Williams, like, that was a race where it could have got a good result. Like, the Williams seems to be strong on kind of like lower downforce tracks. And even though it doesn't have that downforce, it's kind of got to the point where it was like the quickest car on the straight line. So you could do something with that around Monza. Yes. And he used it to like the absolute fullest. And I just thought, I mean, that's where that car should be.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. I mean, when you look at Latifi, I think after the race, he was like, oh yeah, I was struggling with the car. I don't really know what's going on. That's not good enough. That car was good enough to score points.
Exactly. Imagine what Albon was going to do in that car.
Win.
Yeah. Nah.
Tomo would have loved that.
Albon, P1.
The problem is actually also we should temper like the expectations for Williams because I think they're going to be shy in Singapore. Yeah. That is the track that everything about bumpy, not too many straights. You need downforce around there.
The biggest, dirtiest, nastiest, drag-generating son of a gun that you can. You put the barn door on the back of the car.
Williams don't have the barn door, bro. They just don't have the barn door.
They've got some shutters or something that they kind of bolt onto it.
But yeah, it's just interesting with De Vries. Just the way the perspective and the momentum is behind him.
You're only as good as your last race, and he's not going to get another chance anytime soon this season to race. Unless they bin Latifi, 3/4 of the way through the season, which sounds silly.
Yeah, it's just no point.
But it's like, that is cemented now. His last race was taking a backmarker car, finishing in the points, and knocking who he was driving against down to 21st in a 21-driver championship because you've had so many sub-drivers come in and score better results than he has. He's still set on, 0 points?
Mate, it took him 8 races to beat Hulkenberg, or six or 7 races to beat Hulkenberg's best result of a 12th. And he did that in Saudi in the second race. Like, it's Latifi, I mean, I think I've done a video on this, like, he's gone. But what's quite interesting is that if De Vries does end, at the moment we're all going, Williams right now, they're putting that contract in front of De Vries. Sign it, mate. We want you. Latifi's out.
So they're doing what Alpine didn't do.
Yes, Alpine, they don't do contracts. Laurent Rossi.
Hey, we'll drive next season. We'll shake on it,
yeah,
mate,
yeah,
right?
Bro, it's sorted.
Trust me,
bro. I got the seat for you. We'll just Fernando will be. We'll sort Fernando. Don't even worry about it. The seat will be yours, no problem. That's Alpine's strategy. I presume that's the conversation that Laurent Rossi or Otmar Zafno had with Oscar Piastri. But it was one of those trust me, bro.
Trust me, bro.
You'll be on the grid. But it seems like at the moment Williams, I think they do want, and there is a past relationship I think with Jos Capito and Nick De Vries, but if Nick De Vries ends up at an Alpine or an AlphaTauri, what happens then? Because I think the social media pressure and even the pressure in the paddock, I mean, they can't hold on to Latifi. You've got, even if Nick De Vries is no longer an option, you've got to let him go. So who'd you get?
Nicholas Latifi is a bigger gimmick than Fan Boost in Formula E.
Wow. I mean, actually, I agree. As a Formula E, I do like Formula E, but Fan Boost, I still don't get it.
If they get rid of that, it's solid. And that was actually good to go back to that. That was a great event. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience of taking a train, getting on a train, hopping off at a station, and you're in this expedition. You know,
It is nuts, isn't it?
Center, and you're like, here's the race.
The London E-Prix, like,
It was dope.
to describe it in like an accurate way, and I mean this is a good way. Half the track is like in the middle of a shopping center, so it's like literally 20 seconds walk from like your grandstand and like the main straight to like a Subway or something, and then the rest of the track is like outside the building. But it was quite cool. But
It was dope.
It was, yeah, it is what it is. I think Latifi is, yeah, he's out, but I just think who do you think could go there if De Vries isn't an option? There's no way Jos Capito can keep him, because that would look embarrassing.
Man, I don't know, but to go backtrack a little bit, I'm wondering why Helmut isn't looking at Lawson right now.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what it is?
Because I haven't followed the season very well. Like, I think Lawson's pretty solid.
He's been massively unlucky. Like, he's the one driver I look at like this season where he's had so much like luck go against him. And, you know, if the cards were kind of dealt a little bit differently, he could easily be fighting for second or third.
Yeah.
And he's still in, you know, he's still in with a shot finishing near there. So
Yeah.
I just feel like it's weird, because with Red Bull, and I want to get kind of your opinion as someone who knows, again, worked for the team, like, what is the view towards the younger drivers? Because I'm sure they do a lot of sim work, but it seems like Helmut at the moment, he doesn't trust any of them, but they're probably still going to be on the payroll for next year. So it's weird. You've got all these juniors, and I do think that giving Lawson a chance potentially, you know, could be interesting, but he's dead set on, I want Colton Herta. Okay, I can't get him. Okay, now I want Nick De Vries. He's the next guy everyone's talking about, but he's still got all these juniors. So, you know, where do you stand on that?
I think that we went through this phase of what seemed like promoting the guys pretty quickly. Maybe it wasn't very quickly, but like in hindsight, you know, looking back now without having clear image of it in my head, you know, bringing these guys in very quickly and throwing them into Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, and then, you know, promoting a couple of them quite quickly up to Red Bull and then sending them back down to the sister team. It's like this super weird thing. And it's like,
how do people feel about that inside the team, by the way, in terms of like, because there was a period between 2016, 17, 18, there was people all over the place.
Doors.
We had Sainz, we had Hartley, we had obviously, you know, Verstappen and obviously Ricciardo in the main team.
Yeah.
But then we also had, you know, Gasly as well. There was a lot of like
Gasly,
Albon as well. Like, was there? Did anyone even talk about that inside the team in terms of like, is that a bit strange?
You would talk about it, but at the end of the day, it's those guys' decisions to make. So
yeah,
it was like one of those things. It's like, this is what it is. You can't influence it. So whatever you're doing, do whatever you can to, you know, if your driver's going back to the other team, facilitate what you can. There's probably not much to do, but like if you say, for example, you were on one of the car crews that got that new driver, if you were on the car crew that got one of those new drivers, just do whatever you can to help onboard them. There's no fighting it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things. Like, everybody in the team accepts that's what it is. You're not involved in that process. These people are making decisions, and they're on that pay grade to make those decisions. Make it work. And it wasn't, you know, it's one of those things that's weird seeing that sometimes. It's like, you know, when after China and Kvyat got sent back to Toro Rosso and he swapped with Max effectively.
And it was like the next day, wasn't it? Like Monday or something, I remember.
Yeah, exactly. So that was one of those things. It's like, get on with it.
That's it. You just have to get and doing your job.
Yeah, and it who knows? Like, have they made the wrong decisions at times? I'm not sure.
I mean,
but like, I actually genuinely do not have an opinion. Did they make the wrong decisions or not?
You just have to it's not really, when it's out of your hands, I suppose for you, it's easy to just, you know, do whatever you have to do, basically.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, actually, because you mentioned it, let's talk about the next race, because I think a 17-year-old Max Verstappen steps into, obviously used to engineer, be the performance engineer for Kvyat. In comes Max Verstappen, and the next race is Spain 2016. Now, what was that like? Because that was your first ever win. Obviously, I'm sure a massive moment for like the entire team for Max. I mean, what was that like, going your first ever Grand Prix win? Well, you know, you worked in Formula 1 at that time for like 5 years or something. Obviously,
that was probably my fourth or fifth season, maybe fifth season.
Yeah, and I'm sure you celebrated even with Force India when you scored points, had a good weekend.
Wait, with Force India, when you got points, you're like, let's get the beers. You know, let's go. Checo with his podium in Bahrain the year before that. I think that was
2014?
14, yeah. Of course, you remember that more than I do.
No, actually, there is actually a little funny story, because like, I mean, I'm a nerd, obviously. I'm a Formula 1 nerd, and you said your memory isn't as good.
Yeah.
And you were like, I mean, I was literally Daniil Kvyat's like performance engineer, and I don't even remember when his first podium was, and I was like, Hungary 2015. And straight away I was like, yeah, Hungary 2015, man. He was like, oh, fuck's sake.
Yeah, and I remember that, you know, like, but that's one of those things, like when you're, when you're at Force India, when you got points, you're stoked. When you get a podium, you've
just won the world championship.
Yeah,
mate.
exactly. That's like the peak experience. You know, that was my first podium in Formula One, and then Max joins the team. It was interesting because Russia for Daniil was terrible. You know, he had the collision with Seb on the start, and then collected Seb through turn, was it 3 or 4? There's some really good banter from Danny on that, by the way, as well.
What was he saying? What was he saying?
It was
after
when Seb did his retirement announcement.
Yeah.
And Kvyat at him is like, maybe next time don't lift off.
Oh, I saw that.
He's such, but like, if you know Danny, you know he's a super nice guy, and it's his sense of humor. It's not malicious.
To be fair,
it was funny.
One thing we did talk about in terms of like, I remember you mentioned out of all of the drivers you worked, Daniil Kvyat was like probably just one of the most like chillest guys ever.
Yeah, he was good.
But how was that? So how was that race? So Max comes in.
Yeah.
Is there like, I mean, what was the buzz around the team? Again, 17 years old at the time, which is still nuts.
Yeah.
And that first race.
It was like the first simulator session we had with him, because that week is like, right, Max is in the sim, you'll get to meet him. Nice kid, super nice kid, really focused, just wants to go quick, right? And we had a good session, show up to the race, Ricardo out qualifies him, but he's doing, like, he's not messing up. And he's just like, he's still feeling everything out. You're developing your communication with the driver, which is huge.
Because everything's still alien to him in terms of how Red Bull works compared to Toro Rosso.
Absolutely. So it was good, and then it's a really weird phenomenon that I actually don't like talking about, but I'll talk about it. I think
exclusive content.
Yeah, I think this is a weird one. I don't. So where were we in the race? I think on lap 1. Was it lap 1 when they collided?
Yeah. Lewis and Nico. I think Nico was like derating. Like he started on the wrong setting.
Yeah.
And then coming into, I forget what, turn 4, he was derating super early. So Lewis got the run on him, and then we all know what happened after that.
So in the moment, you watch, like, so when you're performance engineering, you've got 1, 2, or 3 monitors with different data feeds on them, right? And you're looking at those and like, but on the race start, there's very little you can do. So I'm making sure, right, I've got tire pressures up just in case there's a puncture, so I'll check those. But you literally, race start, lap 1, you're watching the TV, and I see these 2 dudes take each other out. I didn't celebrate, but my initial reaction was, oh my God. It was, it was like, okay, they're okay. That's fine. Like, that was just a little bit of a wheel bang and end up in Barbados in the beach, and they get their flip-flops out and chill on the beach. But like, my initial reaction was like, oh my God, we've got a shot at winning this race. The 2 guys that are going to run away with this have deleted themselves from this event. We've got a shot now. I was like, I had to stop and look around. I'm like,
what's the mood in the garage at that point when you're looking around everyone?
You don't like.
Is everyone just like super focused? Obviously, they're so in the zone that you just
like,
can't even react.
I think everybody was shocked. Like, the initial reaction was shock. It's like, and then as soon as you realize that you've got a shot, you're like, okay, the dudes are all right. They're going to clear this up. We're going racing. And then basically, I think Daniel got unlucky with his stop sequence.
Yeah, and you got a puncture, I think, later on as well and stuff.
Yeah, so, I mean, Ricardo could have won that easily.
Yeah,
easily.
I think he was annoyed, actually.
He was super deflated.
Could you like tell inside the team? What was that? Because that must be so awkward. Because you're, again, a teenager just comes in and he's just won his first ever race. Yeah, you're Daniel Ricciardo. And 2016 was a bounce back year because 2015 wasn't that great for Ricciardo. He did get beaten by Kvyat, but 2016 was a proper bounce back. And this guy comes in, you've been massively unlucky. So, we've done a little bit of racing, both of us, before, and we know that whether it's reliability or whatever, when things don't go your way, mentally it's difficult. It does hurt. Yeah. And then this guy just wins. And that's so weird.
I think Daniel being deflated, or disappointed in that race because it didn't go his way. But to be fair, Max did a champion drive keeping Raikkonen behind.
Can I just say also, watching that, I knew there's no way Raikkonen was going to pass him. Raikkonen, he wasn't that guy. Kimi Raikkonen,
that guy, pal.
He was not that guy. Like, Max Verstappen, like, even I knew at that point, Max has got this easy. Like, and there was never really even like a wheel-to-wheel moment between them two. Like, Max kind of like...
He kept it, he was Minister of Defense at that one. So, like, that when Max wins that race, that's GP, his race engineer, that was his first win in Formula One. That was my 5th year in Formula One. GP's been in the sport a lot longer than I have. That was his first win. And we had a really good car crew. Like Michael, who's the controls guy, had been controls engineer through Seb and everything. So Michael had couple of championships before. You know, this is our first win, and it was just like everybody was so excited, and it was a huge buzz, and the rest is history, really. It was just super cool.
I mean,
it was a super cool experience.
How have you seen, because you stopped working with Max on track in 2017, I think it was, right?
Yeah, and I did 2018 first race to fill in for my replacement.
Yeah, and then his development has just been crazy, because the talent was always there with Max Verstappen. You could see that the raw talent was always there, but 2017, I think there were a few mistakes a little bit, and then 2018 obviously had a bad start to the season in terms of, like, I think it was like 6 incidents in the first 6 races. I think crashed out in Monaco as well, and saw, you know, Daniel Ricciardo going to win the Monaco Grand Prix, so that was a big hit. With no KERS. I mean, that was just unbelievable. Seb all over the back of him. But then something, I think 2019 actually, when Ricciardo left, and again, I don't know like if there was any like indication of this, but when that team properly became Max's, like, you know, Pierre was in and he was kind of the new guy, even though I think Pierre Gasly's old, he was older than Max. Yeah. So Max is kind of the incumbent driver, but 2019, I think, is the first season where I looked at Max and thought, yeah, I think now he's ready to win a championship. This is his own team. Yeah. He is so comfortable. Everyone's around him. Like, you've got Pierre Gasly struggling because Max Verstappen is just on another level. He's got that team so much around him. That car, you know, even though it wasn't quite up to par with the Mercedes and the Ferrari as well, it was more towards Max's liking, and his teammates just can't cope with that. That was 2019, I think, was the first season where I looked at Max and thought, this guy, I think, in the right car now is ready to win a world championship. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people early on in his career looked at him being super aggressive, over aggressive, super careless.
Verstappen, like that was actually a name that was being used.
That was quite an official line. Now, I didn't.
Also, by the way, fun fact: do you know he actually bought the domain name to Crashtappen?
He did
a few years ago. I think it's shut down now, but a few years ago, if you put www.crashtappen.com, it sent you to his website, his official website. No joke. I tried it like last night, and unfortunately, it doesn't work now. But for a fact, I know a few years ago, if you put like that into the Google, it literally sent you to his website.
Hilarious.
But yeah.
But no, I think he used that experience, and that's kind of his approach to free practice 100% off the bat, find the limit.
That's something I've noticed every single from FP1. He is always up there. He's not one of the guys that like builds up. No. He's not about that life. He's literally there from the first lap, like out lap. He just absolutely he's on the limit so early. And I mean, to me, it's a bit scary to watch, but also exciting as well. Yeah. But he's clearly comfortable in that ragged edge, like that limit.
So, exactly. You take that framework and then apply that to how he approached his career. In the early years, he was way over the limit. But now you see him, no, he doesn't have that much pressure, and he's not under pressure often because Ferrari take themselves out of races. The Mercedes isn't competitive.
We'll talk about Ferrari, don't worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, last year with Lewis was, like, super aggressive, both of them trying to assert themselves as the top driver. And it was a crazy championship, but it was a super exciting year because, I was in it, but I was also really focused on my job, and my job was not about running the car. So, and this year's the first year I'm actually able to sit back and observe it if Red Bull do well, I don't get anything out of it. If they do badly, I don't get anything out of it. So my joy now is that I'm just sitting there.
So you were just thinking about the bonus. I mean, I want the constructor's bonus and the driver's bonus as well.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I'm not really that motivated by money as such, but it's like one of those things. It's like when you're in the team, you're super invested in the team. And now, like, I know so many of the people that work there, so I'm still like, I want to see them happy. I want to see them do well. I know Max very well. I want to see him win. And like people try to demonize this super toxic, and I don't want to get into it, but like, these people like demonizing drivers. It's like, the reason everybody's upset is because the FIA, weaponized the situation and turned fan bases against each other. But realistically, these guys are fighting each other as hard as they possibly can, and they're making mistakes. And that shows that both of them were actually 100% then in.
I think 2021 wasn't a perfect season by both Max and Lewis, because that's real pressure right there. I think the difference between 2021 and 2022 is that the reason why Max is so dominant now is, yes, the car, especially since Spa, and we're going to get into like the car performance in a bit, but especially since Spa, that Red Bull has had the edge, no doubt about it, especially in the races. It's just unbelievable on tyre wear. Whatever strategy you want to give Max, he'll do it. 1 stop, 2 stop, he'll find a way to make it work. But he hasn't been put under pressure at no point. I think especially since Canada and especially France was just a massive weight off his shoulders. That win, that win I think was curtains for Leclerc's and Ferrari's championship. And because he's not been put under pressure, he's just able to perform. He's buzzing. He's buzzing out there. He's just having fun, every single weekend. It's almost like a free shot, am I going to win it? Can I continue this streak? Whilst last season, especially that last half, there was so much pressure. Both Lewis and Max, whatever they want to say, they were sweating. They were looking over their shoulders. They felt it right here.
Dude, and if I could go back, I'd like to see another championship like last year. I would like there not to be any controversy, and I would like whatever happens to happens. I don't care who wins. But that championship, it had everybody invested in, like we were talking about before. People know that Red Bull are going to dominate this one. And I think a lot of people are kind of checking out. People that aren't super nerdy about it. Like a lot of the people on the outskirts of the sport are like checked out now. They're like, Red Bull's locked it in, and it's like, I don't want that. I don't want to see somebody take an easy win. I want to see a super exciting season that goes down to the line. Like
but the
Max
important
could win
thing
in
is,
Singapore.
And I think this is more of a fans thing than anything else. You can't take that away from Red Bull. You can't take that away from Max Verstappen. I mean, he's the guy that's he is in a class of one at the moment. I still think like the two drivers to me, I mean, I know Lewis has obviously made some mistakes like in Spa, but when I look at Lewis and Max, I do still think that they're just a level above Leclerc. Like maybe that's a little bit harsh on Charles, but I just feel like in terms of experience, in terms of that speed, and just in terms of like winning and kind of motivating and carrying the team, I think Leclerc is now finding out how difficult it is to kind of shock the team into action, because Ferrari have been underperforming, and Leclerc is he's got to stamp his authority at that team and say, guys, we need to get it together.
Yeah, and I think Max is good at being demanding. Lewis, like the way that Lewis works with the team and motivates the people, like even when he's down, like in Barcelona, when he was like, guys, let's retire, his team was there. They're like, no, mate, we're getting points today. Come on. Yeah. And then he's like, I'll get points today.
And Spain was a nuts race for Hamilton. His speed was unbelievable.
Yeah, dude. And it's just like one of those things, and he knows it, but it's just like one of those things you're like, this season's trash. I've had the championship ripped out from under me. It's race 4, 5, 6, whatever. Fuck this. I'm gonna towel it. Yeah, but then the team's like, no, come on. And I think Lewis and Mercedes have that. Max and Red Bull have that. And there's like this divide. You don't feel like Leclerc and his team are gelling well, and it doesn't help that they're dropping the ball often, making bad calls on strategy consistently. It's not an accident when it happens.
And I think it's also some of them have been massive mistakes. I mean, the whole Carlos Sainz forgetting his his left rear wheel, in Zandvoort, that's a big mistake. Yeah. But it seems like when Red Bull make a small mistake, and they do make mistakes, but we just don't see them because the car and Max are able to compensate for any. You lose a second, you lose a second or two in the pits. Max will make that up. Yeah, no problem about it.
The pirouette at turn 13 or 14 in Hungary, Max does a spin and carries on because he has that margin in hand, and we don't see him making that many mistakes. But we don't see. I mean, what are Leclerc's mistakes this year? We've had Jeddah.
We did, yeah.
Or was it? It was in Imola. It was in Imola, yeah. Yeah, we've had Imola. Barcelona Q3 run 1, he had a spin.
He did, yeah,
and did well. He recovered that,
and that's Charles' ability to in qualifying.
And then he's had France in the race.
Yeah,
but like in qualifying, come on, dude, he's been on a very high level. And
I know there's this like whole joke about Leclerc obviously always gets pole position. Max converts it into the win. Oh, there's this brilliant meme actually on Twitter. It's like name a better combination, and one picture was Leclerc pole and the other one was Verstappen win. And I know there's that big joke, but I think in terms of raw speed, Leclerc might be the quickest guy out there.
I think so. I think that I would struggle to come up with very many arguments to debate that, because Max has had some inconsistencies, and he's been unlucky in qualifying a couple times. Hungary was another example.
I think Monaco as well. I think he was, if Checo hadn't spun, I think Max was on the lap.
That's conspiracy theory there.
Listen. I mean, you're the one that worked for Red Bull. I'm just a fan talking nonsense. But yeah, it's a weird one. And again, I think the problem with Ferrari is that every single tiny mistake they make, say if they, Red Bull and Ferrari make the same mistake, both lose 2 seconds in the pits. It's magnified when it's Ferrari.
Yeah.
Both the pressure of the championship, both the position they're in now in terms of the amount of points that they lost, and off the back of all of those mistakes that they've made as well. And it's a really interesting dynamic in terms of what Matteo Binotto and how he's decided to handle it, whether you think it's right or wrong. He is 100% almost, I think to some people he looks a little bit deluded in the media in terms of like, we don't make mistakes. This was just a circumstance, and that's what he keeps blaming it on, bad circumstance. But I think that's Ferrari's defense mechanism now in the media.
Yeah,
that's not going to throw anyone under the bus.
That's their outward-facing presence, but I'm sure people are getting chewed out back at the factory. But
it's got to happen, yeah. But And
Shambles, mate.
But it's
shambles.
And again, looking at the thing about where the car performance is now, and obviously, again, since Spa, the Red Bull has just been incredible, like an amazing car. Undoubtedly now the better car over the course of the entire season, and maybe you can say that even if it was, let's say after Hungary, after France, maybe Leclerc wins it, and there's 20 or 30 points between Max and Charles, but it doesn't matter because Max would have won most of the races anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the point. I think it's more that pressure was never there on Max because when the cars were close, because our first video, again, at the end of the video, I said, I want a one-word answer. We compared the performance of the Red Bull RB18 and obviously the Ferrari F1 75. This was, I think, after Miami, so back when we thought we still had a championship fight.
Yeah.
And I asked you at the end of the video, if just out of nowhere, out of which car would you want right now? And you said Ferrari, and it's just that was not a bad answer. That was bang on the money, I think, because that Ferrari was definitely quick enough in qualifying, obviously.
Yes.
And if the team kind of functioned a little bit better, both from the driver's side and also in terms of the structure and management. Operationally, exactly. I think they could have kind of put more pressure onto Max and Red Bull by France, Hungary, but that car performance now looks irrelevant because of how far back in the championship they are.
And I think we also have had a shift since the break as well. Like, I can't pick out from the data what's going on in terms of did the floors lose performance? Did Red Bull lose out on performance? It looks like Red Bull hasn't lost anything. Mercedes is thereabouts where they were in terms of single lap pace, and depending on the circuit nature, they can be in the fight in a race, or they can be clearly in no man's land between, the third fastest and the fourth fastest team. But definitely now, after the break, Red Bull are able to hang on to their tires much better than the Ferrari. You've seen that. You remember what happened in Austria? Max was on the lead, burned up his tires. Leclerc ate him up, and then Leclerc
kept overtaking him. I think it was 3 times.
Yeah.
But one thing, even about that, I've always made the point that if the roles were reversed in that race, Max overtakes Leclerc once, never sees him again. But even when Ferrari have probably the biggest advantage they've had the entire season just through one race, like Austria was their track clearly.
Yeah.
It still takes Charles 3 times to overtake Max Verstappen to win it. And even then, let's not forget, at the end of the race, he had a problem with, I think with his throttle or something. Like it was sticking a little bit. He was literally, I remember seeing it the data as he was going through the corners.
He could, the pedal wasn't backing
the
off.
The throttle was he was still on throttle by, is it like 30 or 20%? I remember, I forget. But so even when they have the most dominant car throughout the season in just one single race, it's still a struggle, isn't it?
It's mind blowing, man. But I think now, Red Bull's qualifying pace, if they put the lap together, it's thereabouts. Ferrari are having to push. They don't have a 2.2% gap on them anymore, so a couple tenths. They're thereabouts. And then in a race, Ferrari is struggling to keep the rear tires on the car. We saw that. Like, there was Leclerc's on newer, softer tires, and he's not closing the gap. They did one extra stop in Monza. Yes, they did get screwed a little bit by the virtual safety car ending earlier than they thought it would, which is, I think that was calculated. I don't write that off as a mistake, but they literally went with an alternate strategy, thinking they probably had the pace in hand, and then they realized, team, we don't have the pace.
Yeah,
or
we
the
don't
degradation. Our rear tires are overheating more.
I mean, Leclerc was like, I think at one point his team was asking him to do something. I think it was like maybe some lifting coastal or something, and he was like, "This is all I've got."
Yeah.
I mean, I can't go. I need to go flat out.
Yeah. If I'm going to catch him, I need to go faster, but the tires are overheating, so I need to go slower. So it's like, that's the conundrum.
And also, I mean, Red Bull turned up. When you look at the wing that Red Bull were running at Monza, it was. Bro, they got the Monaco wing for Monza.
They had some curvature on that, and everybody else is running the little coffee tray on the back or something.
And I think that's directly linked into the tire performance as well, in terms of like they're able to run such an efficiently, like their downforce is so efficient to where they're able to run like mass amounts of wing, but it doesn't actually take away too much of their top speed. Like Max was still overtaking people easily on the straights.
Yeah.
And Ferrari is running barely any wing, but it's affecting their tires because even though they have less downforce, I think the car's just working, even when you're turning and you're trying to put the power down, it's just taking more out of the tires.
I think that's the thing, and it's a really, really fine margin, but what you'll see is people talk about high rear, high downforce, high deg. No, they talk about low downforce, high deg. Maybe, but for the most part is how much stress, how much are you sliding the tires? And if the car is, let's say it's really peaky and it's losing downforce and sliding around a lot, you're gonna burn up your tires. Yeah. And likewise, if you have a huge rear wing on the car and you can go flat out through all the corners, absolutely caning it everywhere, you're gonna overheat the tires. There's no way around that. The more work you put into the tires, but when you're able to go quickly through the corners and lift and coast a little bit at the end of the straights to cool the tires and not smash the brakes everywhere. You can just stretch those things out, and the drivers are good at it. The Red Bull has really good traction right now. So Ferrari, monstrous on the brakes. They've been great on the brakes all season, and that's not really been much of a talking point. Because
well, we have seen it with Leclerc. I mean, some of his overtaking moves, the one in Austria on Max, he came from miles back. I think that's got to be one of the best overtakes I've seen this season. I mean, Leclerc, that was an amazing one on the brakes. I don't think he even locked up. The confidence he has on them, it's unbelievable.
The Ferrari has huge braking capacity.
It's unreal, but it clearly is not transferring. I think, again, driving style and downforce levels and how the car interacts with the tyres, something about Max in that package right now is just coming together, and we're seeing one of the all-time great drivers in a car that he's a lot more comfortable. I still don't think that he's 100% comfortable with it, but he's adaptable, isn't he? Like, he's been able to suit that car much better.
And I see that in terms of qualifying, because they're not nailing qualifying all the time. You're looking at, best sectors, and they're not, all the best sectors aren't in the final run all the time. Yeah. So that's kind of a good indication that maybe you did, maybe you didn't.
How much do you think he's giving up? And actually, and this is what I kind of want a little bit of insight in terms of when people say we set the car up more for the race, we're not thinking too much about quality setup. What does that actually mean? And from a performance engineer standpoint,
I think one of the biggest things when you're talking about qualifying a race compromises, you're talking about the rear wing level. So the amount of speed through the corners versus the amount of speed on the straights. So for example, the compromise might be that, let's say you've opted for a race setup. You might be, I don't know, 2 or 3 kilometers an hour faster in a straight line, but losing out, half a tenth throughout the lap through the corners.
Yeah.
So I probably got that backwards, but basically if you're doing a race setup, you're giving up a little bit in the corners to go a little bit faster in straight lines so that you have some capacity for overtaking, because an overtake requires a pace advantage and a top speed advantage. Usually you get the top speed advantage from your DRS.
Yeah.
But you still need a pace advantage.
And that can come either from the car or the tires. And again, the way you set your car up is going to determine how much tire life you're going to have compared to the car ahead. So
for example, another compromise in terms of setup would be the mechanical balance, or how much anti-roll bar in general you have on the front versus rear. So if you have a really pointy car, that would be really good to get you through a qualifying lap. But as the car is super reactive, you might put a lot more stress into the rear tires. So that would be a good example of a qualifying setup. A car with a lot of front end, but it destroys the rear tires too quickly. So you could go fast over one lap, but if you do qualifying laps with that kind of balance, 20 laps in a row, your stint will be much shorter than somebody that's not caning the rear tires as hard.
But and obviously that kind of leads quite well onto Checo. Now, he's had an interesting season, I think, because in terms of the global picture, I think the entire season, I think he's been exactly where he needs to be. He's still fighting for second in the championship. Yeah. Max is running away with it, whatever. But when you actually look at where, there's been this whole rhetoric, especially since Spa, and the fact that Checo has dropped off, that gap is back to 6 tenths, 5 tenths, maybe even more. But he is still fighting for second in the championship. He's doing exactly what Red Bull need him to do. But what I think is important is, was that first half of the season an aberration where, actually not even the first half, let's be honest, up until Canada, I think obviously, again, in Baku, he outqualified Max.
Sure.
In the race, Max passed him he was, driving Checo was driving a Williams.
Yeah.
So was that first third of the season an aberration, and is that, we're going to look back at that as that was the purple patch, or is this now the norm going forward, that that's it?
I think that's a really tough question to answer, because I think the nature of that discussion goes back to something I looked at in detail, and something that Max talked about a little bit in the press, or his dad even made mentions to it. He said, and Pirelli even talked about this, the 2022, the 18-inch Pirellis have very weak front tires, and it's taken teams a long time to figure out, how do I add...
There's a lot of understeer at the front especially.
Exactly. So what do we do with aero? What do we do with the car setup, which allows us to put front end in the car at these low speed turn-ins? Max's biggest gripe was in Monaco. He was like, the car doesn't have enough front end for me to be confident to lean on the car and push it into the corner. Checo likes that kind of car. That's also one of the things that Checo can do, which has made him, historically, Checo's excellent at go fast and save tires. He's done it.
Performance engineer at Force India. I mean, that's where he made his name. Is I still remember, even actually in the Sauber days, Monza 2012, he was able to just take tires. You give him a tire, you tell him a lap, no problem.
I can do it. He's like, I'll go as slow as I need to go, but I will not go any slower. And that's what he did over Hulkenberg. When he was at Force India, Hulkenberg would end up going too slow. It's I didn't know. And Checo just was really good at sensing that and keeping it I'm not going to overheat it. I'm going to keep it in the window.
But I think that setup, and my kind of theory is that we both know, I mean, all of the chats that I've had with you, the team don't go to the drivers and say, right, Checo, what do you want from the car? Actually, do you know what? We don't care about you. We don't want to know. They don't go to Max and go, right, what do you want? Perfect. That's what we're going to do. Checo, go away. They don't do that. But I think what's happened, that car was a lot closer to the Ferrari at the beginning of the season when it was a lot more closer to Checo's driving style, again, a bit more understeer.
Yep.
Max couldn't quite get that front turn working. But as the car has got closer to Max, I think that aids in performance. I think where they're finding the performance gains and the downforce gains, naturally, I think Max is just able to get more out of it. And that's the gap that we're seeing. So I think they probably could make a car that's a bit closer to both drivers. But again, I think it would be slower to where it is right now.
100%.
And the performance of a car is judged by what the quickest driver can do. They're the ones that point out the dynamic limitations.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Like I don't really feel like they're developing the car for Max. They're literally adding performance to the car. And if you can add performance to the car and he can add a bit more front end, he can live with a car that's a little bit more unstable, moving a little bit more on the entry, and he can trust that and be confident on that car. Whereas Checo needs that super stable car. But when you have, no matter who you talk to about what car you're talking about, whoever can drive a more unstable car will go faster. Invariably, like, yes, it may be more difficult on the tires, but if you can deal with that, then you can leave it up to the driver to control the car. It's like, I can put it there and go fast when I need to, but I can also look after the tires. It's not like it's snapping out from under me. So he's got a pointy car, which is pretty predictable. He can go fast. Checo needs probably a bit more stability.
And I think it's that gap to Ferrari. Like, I think you've got two choices here. Make a car that's, where Checo and Max are a little bit closer, but naturally that brings them back to Ferrari.
Yeah.
Or you make a car that's, again, not suited 100% towards Max, but just he's able to access more of the performance from what they're trying to add to the car, and that gives you a more dominant car.
Yeah.
Now that comes at the cost of Checo being a little bit slower. Again, we're talking 6/10 to half a second in quali. That's back to Gasly, Albon levels, but look at the season they're having since Max has been a lot more comfortable in the car. What are you going to take? A bunch of close races between you and Ferrari, or Max domination? And if that leaves Checo half a second behind, you've just had 5 wins in a row. What are you going to complain about?
Yeah, but I guess that brings the other question into play is, what if you weren't running away with the championship? What if you're like, we'd be a lot better in the championship if Checo was finishing, fourth behind Max, always finishing third, instead of finishing sixth and Max finishing third. So that's an interesting compromise, and they don't really need to worry about it when they're that much on the lead. Now, if they were on the back foot, you would probably be exerting more pressure on your other driver.
I think there'd be even more of a spotlight on the whole, this car is more tailored towards Max, but because he's running away with it, results speak for themselves, and the results say that Red Bull are doing the best, with both drivers, they're doing the best job possible. So I think it's going to be an interesting one in terms of how they're going to handle it in the future. What is going to happen next season? Because Checo, again, he's got that contract for next year that's going to run out, and this whole Red Bull saga is just going to keep spinning round and round. I mean, do you think who do you think is going to be next after Checo? Or do you think he will be the long-term option? Because it feels like they're trying to groom Yuki Tsunoda to maybe, again, we know these Honda rumors as well.
Yeah.
They'd love to have a Japanese driver in there, but Yuki needs a little more time.
Yeah,
you can't just shove him into that environment, not just in terms of the car, the pressure.
The pressure, 100% the pressure, man. That was the first thing. It's like, don't worry about the car, worry about the pressure. That's a really tough question. I don't know. It's like,
I'm asking you to give me a definitive who's going to be in that car 2024, but
I'm still
we don't
wondering
know.
what's up with Lawson. Like, clearly, I don't think Lawson's going to rock up and smash his first season. He might, but, clearly he's not on their radar for the next season anyway.
Which is weird, isn't it? It's just, it's weird, that whole junior program thing, but ultimately at the moment they've got Max, they've got him on a long-term contract, and I think, honestly, they don't care what happens with anyone else. They've got their golden goose. Max is performing. He's in his prime right now.
Yep.
That car is suiting him. Their opposition is falling over, and that's all Red Bull are thinking about, to be honest.
Who's your best pairing in a car? Red Bull. Do you go with two A-tier drivers or two S-tier drivers? Or do you do an A and a B? We've
seen throughout Formula 1. Listen, I love Leclerc and Sainz. They're close. They can really mix it up. I love Russell and Hamilton. Dominant pairings always come when there's one, when you have a Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, and you have that
wingman.
And Checo, I think Checo also, as frustrated as he might be, he's got enough experience, and he was out of Formula 1 at the end of 2020. He did not have a seat. So Red Bull came to his, they came to him. So he would have been out of Formula 1. He's at a top team. And I think you have to have almost that perspective where, listen, I'm not going to be as quick as Max. I've got to accept that. Just obviously you hate it as a driver. You can never, I know people say you can never think like that.
Yeah.
But you've got to know that you're not going to be as quick as Max. But on the days when things go wrong for Max, I might have the car to pick up the pieces, get podiums, maybe even a Grand Prix win. And I mean, if he doesn't accept that, go slum it in the midfield. Maybe a sixth or a fifth place would be like a podium for you then. But
I don't think we're done with Checo in terms of his level. I think it's an interesting year for him. And if the tires change in the right direction for him next year, it sounds like they're trying to take the tires the opposite way. They're trying to add more front end for the next set of Pirellis, but maybe they can come up with something from, because for sure they're not just being like, you know what, Checo, piss off. They're trying to get the most out of the car for both the drivers right now. Yeah. They're adding performance and like, right, Max can kind of, like we've seen it in the last couple of years, Max can kind of drive anything. Checo, what do you need? Because if we add what Checo needs to the car, as long as it doesn't make the car slower, Max will go faster with that as well. But what you would, as a team would like to see is the gap between them close, and you're 1-2ing those races. And like you said, when the driver that's at the top of the championship, something happens, the other driver is always there to pick up the pieces.
Exactly. So I think, to me, if it would be Max and Checo for the long term. I mean, unless next year you can see that Checo is losing it mentally, which I don't think. As long as he has a sense of perspective of where he is in his career, what team he's in a top team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, like I said, if Checo is not happy, and I know he's not going to be happy, would you rather slum it in a midfield team fighting for fifth, or on a good day, or would you rather just you're at a top team, you're at the top. It is what it is.
Life is good.
Exactly, life is good, even if you're not going to be fighting for race wins, and let's be honest, championships as well. But again, I think it's that sense of perspective, and if he's going to be able to handle it, but we're going to see, I think, next year now.
Yeah, for sure.
So Max Verstappen's performance engineer, also you're race winner, and also you're a world champion as well. I mean, you did you were working there when Max won the world championship, or in the same year.
It was weird because I wasn't there for that race, but I feel like a lot of my fingerprints are still on a lot of stuff.
It was not like you won the championship. No, Max didn't do anything.
I didn't do it. No, but it's like a lot of the stuff that I've done while I was there, whether it was processes and tools that we use in the simulator, data analysis methods, improving model correlation simulations, tools that the performance engineers are still using at the track, that I had a big part in doing those. So, and
it must be amazing. I mean, to see again, to see Max win the world championship, that in a small way you were part of that. So race winner, champion with Red Bull as well. How do you then move to F1 YouTube, F1 Twitter, Twitch, this space in general? Because again, the funny part is when I first watched your video, it was the Bahrain one. And I actually told him, I actually skipped ahead in the video. I didn't see, in your intro, you talked about yourself a little bit, like where you worked, and I skipped straight to the data. And I watched his video and I thought, oh my God, this guy's like, it's unbelievable the way he talks about data. Like, he not only does he know it really well, but he's also just like communicating it amazingly. And then I skipped to the beginning of the video. I was like, oh, that's why.
That's why he's used to doing this.
He was doing this for a decade. So how did that come about? Like, what made you, leave Formula One? And obviously we've just had the 24 race calendar as well. So you can maybe give your thoughts on that. But from Max Verstappen's, performance engineer, then obviously working at the factory, developing on the sim, to YouTuber, Twitch streamer, like how does that come about?
So I think for a lot of people, I'll wrap this up pretty quickly. So for a lot of people, when COVID hit, they looked for outlets, and one of my outlets was gaming on Twitch. I played a lot of Call of Duty Warzone. That was my game. That was my jam. I hate that game with a passion now, by the way. But Warzone 2, please. But no, that was the kind of thing. It was like, right, this is one of my passions. I'd invested a lot of time, and it got to the point where it was like on my lunch breaks, I was editing TikToks, Warzone TikToks. I was editing Warzone content for YouTube. And I didn't really integrate too much of me as a professional into my streams. Like, people knew that I worked in Formula One, but it wasn't like I wasn't talking about it because I didn't feel correct talking about stuff, which is, some of it was sensitive. Like,
and you got to be careful with Red Bull, a top team championship battle as well. That just adds more.
You don't want to talk about stuff like that could get out in the press. So I kept that for the most part to myself. People that I knew well, they knew, it's like, oh, Blake works at Red Bull, fine.
to be fair, it was the same when I was at uni and I was doing YouTube for like in my final year of uni. I was obviously doing YouTube just on the side, and they kind of I never actually talked about it, but
No.
some of them knew. Obviously,
Yeah, exactly. You keep yourself, and that's what I did. And it's like, I'd go work on, I'd stream in the evenings after work a couple of days a week, maybe once on the weekend. During my lunch breaks, I'd be editing short form content because that's the way to grow on streaming services is make content elsewhere. And then I was like, you know what? This is going pretty well. I had a good community. I had quite a bit of support, and it was like could almost carry me over. So I was like, you know what? I've been doing this back at the factory for 4 years now. I'm not on the steep end of the learning curve, and I thrive in the sink or swim environment. It's like pressure, and it can be too much pressure, but it wasn't. It was like, I want this challenge, So I decided, like, you know what? I've been doing a bit of the same. There's not much scope for me to change what I'm doing in the meantime. And I'm kind of excited about this gaming content creation space, which is kind of weird going from Formula One engineer to gaming content creator. Because
it's not a natural career path, it must be said.
A lot of people, I did a video talking about it, which blew up. And a lot of people said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever done. I was like, well, you've never tried anything hard in your life. And for a fact, I think gaming content creation is insanely hard. And I have so much respect to the people turning that into a living, man. That is insane. And it's not playing video games. It's all the hard work. And you know exactly what that's about, making YouTube content.
It's not just, even today, this video, how long did it take for us to like settle this up? And like, we didn't, by the way, we barely even got in the building, actually, it must be said.
Yeah.
We had to like fight our way in, but there is a lot going on. And I think, but what's quite interesting is that I hear so many people go, oh my God, I want to work in Formula One and stuff like that. And then they start, doing YouTube, or they start from this space, but you're the complete opposite. You already worked in F1, moving over to this space. So complete difference.
My whole career has been a downgrade since I was working with Max at the track. So I was like trackside performance engineer, then simulator performance engineer, which was good because I had a lot of insight that I could feed back into how we use the sim to feed information to the track. And now I feel like I've done that thing again, and I've not made it work yet. I don't feel like I said this is successful, but it's fun. So now I've gone out of Formula One, and I as soon as I left Red Bull, I was like, I'm going to focus on gaming content for a while.
Yeah.
I got fed up with Warzone. I started playing Escape from Tarkov, which is a fantastic and punishing, brutal game. And I was like, you know what? My heart's not in this. And so throughout, I always did a little bit of crossover, talking about Formula One and gaming. I was like, you know what? Why don't I start, Brrrake is my Twitch, Twitter, and everything else. I was like, why don't I start BrrrakeF1 on YouTube? I had a couple of people tell me, it's like, you should talk about F1. Everybody loves it. So okay, I'll do it. So I started doing it, and it's just like I started talking about it on stream. I do, data analysis, because we have access to a lot of Formula One data through Fast F1, the Python API.
Yes.
And that's where I get a lot of my content. I started off just doing streams, looking at data, talking to people about it, and I was like, people like this.
Weirdos like me.
Yeah, Aldous skips the intro, goes straight to the meat. Yeah,
I'm that fraud. Yeah. I skipped the intro, I went straight to the meat. I was like, I want data. I want to be fed.
Yeah. So, and that started resonating. I was like, okay, cool. Why don't I start investing in this? And then slowly, I've spent less time investing in gaming, more time investing in Formula One. And now I'm like, I went from 80% gaming, 20% F1. Now I'm 80% F1, 20% gaming, still on Twitch, still on YouTube, some F1 Manager, Tarkov, F1 22, but most of the stuff that I'm doing is analytical, educational Formula One content, and a lot of that is focused on helping other people, young people that want to be a Formula One engineer. It's like, well, there's nobody talking about it because everybody's doing it, so why don't I tell you guys?
That was the first, when I saw your content, that's the first thing that came to my mind. I've never seen this before, and in the Formula One space, it's still such a young kind of content creation space when you compare it to gaming or FIFA or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Or IRL footballs, podcast.
And
streams.
for there to be a niche, like I almost didn't even think about that. Of course, a niche for data, people that want to do that, but also talking about it in the context of maybe a situation or a driver and kind of adding that little bit as well. And that's why I just found your content it was crazy. It was so enlightening just to me, and I loved it. And that's obviously when I hit him up in the DMs, do you want to come on the channel?
Mate. You want to call some random dude on the internet and we can talk from our bedrooms on our webcams.
Exactly, yeah.
But at the same time, I look at guys like you and Tomo and a lot of other, I'm leaving out so many names, which is a disservice, but it's I look at you guys' content and it's your knack for storytelling and your passion for the sport and the history of the sport. I'm not that guy. I don't remember stuff that I can look up, which is, I'm notoriously bad at. Sorry, Danny, I forgot. Hungary podium, my bad. I love you, man. But, it's one of those things. It's but I was like, I'm not that person. I don't need to be, because there's already excellent people, and I'm learning from you guys.
And you don't need to pretend to be someone you're not, because that will never work well online. It would just
exactly.
Your motivation won't be there.
No, exactly.
Ultimately, when it gets tough.
Yeah, so it's like looking to you guys about how to tell stories and stuff like that. That's something I'm learning, and I find good. But it's like, I'll tell a different story, a different way, and I'll hopefully lean heavily on data, and maybe use some of the myths or trends and ideas. And say
F1 conspiracies.
Yeah. Does the data stack up? And if it can't back up, I'll try to avoid my confirmation bias. But it's cool. So it's gone from F1 doing F1 YouTube 8 months. I'm gonna say this: F1 YouTube content creation is harder than fucking Formula One. I swear to God, I have since my first year being at the track as a performance engineer at Force India. This is the hardest I've ever worked, because, and I'm not, it's not like you show up and you make a couple YouTubes that pop off and you make a lot of money. No, it's like you make a couple YouTubes that pop off, then you have a bigger audience, and then you continue to create content, improve it every day. And then, the economics of it start to make sense, but I'm nowhere near that point. And I'm loving it.
But your growth, I mean, again, it's like you said, it's a new challenge for you, and you're someone that's motivated by that single swim environment. And again, you've got obviously you and Dan now doing the podcast as well. Again, massively recommend, will be linked, and your channel as well. I mean, it's just, you've got all these avenues that are starting now.
Yeah, and it's starting to make sense. Like the ecosystem and the business model is starting to make sense. But my girlfriend backed me. She's like, you should do whatever makes you happy. And we could, I could see that gaming content creation could have made sense, but it wasn't going to scale with effort. If I double my time that I was doing on gaming content, I'm not going to double my success. Whereas this, it's like, I am in a bit of a niche, but I'm party of one in that niche. And then I can learn other aspects and improve my skills in those aspects of content creation. And so it's super cool, man. I'm learning so much every day. Learned how to set up this little studio, probably poorly, but we're gonna smash it.
We're gonna find it. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna find out how we set it up when the final product is made.
Yeah, let's make sure the memory cards haven't run out of space real quick, actually. But
what memory cards?
You didn't put them back in?
No.
Oh shit. Right. Well, we're only an hour and 15 minutes into this episode.
Well, listen, one last one really quick. With the and kind of off the back of why you decided to leave Formula One, 24 race. 24 race. What did it get up to? Actually, when you were trackside and traveling around the world, what was it maximum at that point? Was it
21?
21.
I think it's 21, 22.
And how did that feel? So 21 races. Did you feel like, I just wish there was more?
Yeah,
more races.
I just wish I never had to go home.
Yeah.
That's me. You know what? And that could have been a great thing. You could live out of a suitcase. You don't ever have to have a home. If you have a partner or children, forget those people. They're dead to you. You can get new ones later.
Yep.
For me personally, that was my motivation to leave the trackside life, because 21-ish races a season, including 2 to 3 preseason tests. And as a performance engineer, I wanted to learn how to race engineer a car. So I would do, if we had a Pirelli test or a young driver test mid-season, I would tend to do those. So you're looking at 26, 27 weeks away per year. Plus, my family are all in America. So going home for 2 weeks over shutdown and 2 weeks over Christmas, that was my whole holiday. The 2 week shutdown and the 2 weeks then. I would get back from a race, a European race. We land Sunday night at midnight, 1 a.m. You're back in the factory at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. It's flat out. It's nonstop. So
jet lagged,
yeah,
hungover,
yeah, jet lagged, whatever. It's and at that point, it's not to have a gin and tonic on the plane, because you're going to get back to the factory and you're going to be exhausted. You can't afford to be hungover. You've got another race next weekend to prepare for. And it was there's two aspects of it. It was the nonstop, how consistent and persistent it was, and then there was the rinse repeat nature of operation or performance engineering or running a car. I was like, well, I don't want to be a race engineer, because that's even more focused on operation.
More pressure as well.
More pressure, and then less development, less, writing code, writing software, analysis software, writing tools, and finding better methods to optimize the car. I'm a geek. I'm not a
I can't tell, mate.
I'm not a
I can't tell that at all.
I'm not a clipboard babysitter. I need to geek out hard. That's why I quit my job on F1 to do F1 for YouTube, data analysis. And as soon as I found out that existed. But back to the point, 24 race calendar, man.
What do you
Thoughts
think?
and prayers.
Something Dan said, like the teams only like found out about it about apparently like 2 hours before or something.
Yeah, they knew that it was going to be a 24 calendar, but in terms of like what the calendar looked like, they're like, not send it.
And there is some back-to-backs which are nuts. I think like Baku to like Miami or something, and Vegas
to
is it like Brazil or something?
no, Vegas to
Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi.
Oh my! Vegas to Abu Dhabi. What road trip?
But also the Vegas is going to be European time, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because it's going to be at like F30 in the morning on Saturday.
It's going to be like 6 o'clock in the morning. Can I say I love that, by the way? I'm actually like, a lot of people hate the early starts. I love races in Asia, like Japan and like Australasia, like in Australia. Like you wake up in the morning, Formula One is there.
Yeah.
When the races are in the US,
you're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
bro,
Get out of here.
I am that guy. I am that guy. Like
God.
when races are in Canada or the US, you have to wait till like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
European time. I'm like, mate, I want the race right now.
Yeah,
so I mean, that's
I
gonna
can
be great
spend
for
the
me.
evening writing content about it. It's like qualifying and the races happen right now.
Yeah, so you watch the race early in the morning, and then you have all day to write about the race, for the video. So for me, it works out. But yeah 24 races. What kind of impact do you think that's going to have, like, on the people working in Formula One? Because I think potentially, like, I think there's going to be more people that are going to be leaving F1 because of it. Like,
I think so. You're going to see. And the problem is, we're now in a cost cap era, which staff personnel salaries are in that. So, the people you have to pay, and it's like, well, we've got 24 races. Our mechanics are destroyed. Don't like, the track is not just mechanics and engineers. It's mechanics, it's engineers, it's hospitality, catering, marketing, digital media, communications, doctors. It's literally everything. So it's insane. They're going to have to increase the number of personnel. Like when I was on my way out of the trackside role, I was throwing around, it's like, could we have 3 performance engineers? You have 1 primary performance engineer for each car and 1 person that floats between. And, you could go from 22 races and it works out to like 16 races each, which is still a lot.
how did that go down?
At the time, they weren't too interested in it. But I think it's now getting to the point where you're pushing over that limit. But I don't think you can swap race engineers at events. I think the race engineer and driver pair absolutely has to happen. Performance engineer, I'm not the person talking to the driver all the time. I talk to him in the garage about what's going on. But anyway, I think you're going to have to start adding personnel, and they're going to have to adjust the cost cap because you're going to need to pay people money to do demanding jobs where they're away a lot.
And to be fair, Ferrari, I mean, back in 2020, when like between 2021 and 2020, they actually let go a bunch of their staff, but they were able to relocate to Haas's new, work for Haas in Maranello. But yeah, it's this side that I think everyone thinks when, and again, how many times have we seen online, I want to work in F1, I want to work in F1.
Yes.
I don't think people actually realize what work and working in Formula One and the travel, the kind of mental like effect that has on you. I think people just think that it's all, going to tracks, buzzing, winning, all that sort of good stuff. But there's a lot of, I'm sure, bad days.
No, yeah, and there's you have highs and lows, but at the end of the day, you do not get to travel the world as such. You show up airport, you bus to an airport, you go to an airport, you go to a hotel, you go to a track, back and forth to the hotel. You might get 1 or 2 evenings to go have a drink somewhere, have a meal, but other than that, it is a grind. And
I think the way you put it is you see the airport, the stinky van, the hotel, and then the track, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah, you maybe get a little bit more in some of the flyaway back to backs, but it is a lifestyle. Yes, there are high highs. The lows are abysmal. But it's like one of those things. If you thrive in that kind of environment, it's all about you as a person, and do you want to do that? Because it is hard work. Everybody says they want to do it, but to be realistic with you, not everybody's cut out for it. And like even me, I realized I do not want to be a race engineer after 6 more years. I did 6 years as a trackside performance engineer. I do not want to be doing this job in 6 years because I want to go back, and my values are somewhere else. My values are, I have hobbies. I want to have a relationship with somebody where I'm not gone half of the year. So
yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, 24 races, and the thing is, in the FIA, I think sporting code, the limit is 25. And if the limit is 25, that means they're gonna try and go for that 20 feet. You don't put that regulation in the sporting code, or I forget what specific document it is, but you don't put that regulation limit for 25 races and then just leave it at 24. That's what they're aiming for.
That is the goal, and it is about generating revenue, and that's why the calendar is hopping and skipping all over the place and not doing go to North America, do 5 races, go to Europe, do 5 races, go to Yeah,
because also, I mean, from a financial point of view, like, you can't have 5 American races back to back to back. You need to for financial reasons and to make the most money out of it, you got to spread them out. So someone goes, I want to go to, if you're from America, I'm going to go to a Formula One race at the beginning of the year, and then I'm going to go to one at the end of the year. You know,
Who are these people? How can they afford it? Have you seen the ticket prices,
mate? They're all pretty. I mean, the Miami ticket prices, even Silverstone. With the whole dynamic pricing, mate. I get
dynamic price gouging.
It was unreal. Like, a shout out to my guy JB, by the way, because he managed to buy tickets. So
Let's go, dude.
I am not going to be crying at home. I'm actually going to be at Silverstone, luckily for 2023. But yeah, 24 races. It's going to be a madness. I think I want to hear more from the people working, not necessarily the people we see on TV, but like the actual staff as well, and seeing what kind of effect it has on them. But listen, also, I mean, for us content creators, it's just, bro, even more races, even better.
I'm working, like, I quit traveling to go to all the races to sit in my office to watch the races. And then as soon as I'm done, instead of doing a debrief, I'm working on analysis and like, what story am I going to tell from this Grand Prix? I'm back in it, but I'm a sicko. I love it too.
I know, me too.
Love it.
We're both, we're both pretty crazy like that. But yeah, I think we're gonna end it here, man. That was a pretty decent little chat. Not gonna lie, that was sick. But yeah, so there you go. I'm gonna start wrapping it up. I hope you did enjoy this kind of little different style of video. Again, a bit more different than just like. Wait, is he gonna speak or wait? Oh, I've got. Is the connection right? Is
Hello?
he cutting up?
Buffering? Buffering?
Okay, we're back. No, it's always good to speak. It's so much different vibe speaking with people in real life. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. We're going to hopefully make a bunch of videos out of this and also have hopefully more people on as well. So mix it up a little bit. But again, thank you for watching. If you did enjoy, then don't forget to drop a like and also smash that subscribe button as well. Don't forget to check out BrrrakeF1. All of the links will be in the description. And also his brand new podcast with Dan as well. I mean, I'm enjoying that thoroughly, especially the last one. That was amazing. So yeah, go check out all of his links, and that's it.
See you next time.
We're out.